Hello everyone, this is Marco and welcome back to my channel. After a couple of months of absence, I'm finally back. I'm ready to review stuff and to make stuff too. So what better way to start with reviewing this Hammond collection, Irritator. This has been a very interesting release by Mattel for their premium collector's line, as this isn't a Jurassic World or Jurassic Park movie dinosaur at all. No, they kind of made this design based on a dinosaur from the Jurassic Park 3 Nintendo Game Boy Advance park builder, I believe. I'll put up a picture of it right now on the screen, and they kind of made their own version of it. But before we get into all of that, let's have a look at the packaging. The packaging is the standard Hammond collection stuff. It's got a black design with some glossy Jurassic logos, the Hammond collection logo, and the name of the dinosaur on the front. As this isn't from any kind of Jurassic movie, it doesn't have a Jurassic movie logo on it at all. If we look at the back of the box, there is a short description of the dinosaur. Irritator. Living up to the name, the Irritator is a ferocious and aggressive carnivore that has a long snout and primarily feeds on fish. Which is correct, but also very incorrect. It is true that it was a carnivore and had a long snout and fed on fish, but it's implying that it's called Irritator because it was an aggressive carnivore and ferocious. If Mattel even did a quick Google search, they would have realized that it wasn't named after it being a ferocious carnivore, but because of how upset the paleontologists were with the conditions of the fossil. In fact, the quick Google search says, the genus name comes from the word irritation, reflecting the feelings of paleontologists who found the skull and had been heavily damaged and altered by the collectors. So yeah, the fossil was pretty much damaged with layers of plaster and everything by collectors and whoever excavated it, that it was apparently a massive pain in the backside to clean up. So that is the reason why it's called Irritator. Once you open the box, it comes in two separate parts. And here they are. It comes with the front part and the tail, and it needs some assembly. As you can see, there is a tiny little key there that we have to line up with that side, so that's what we're going to do. And it clicks right in. Now the interesting part about this is that it can be taken off too. So if you want to put it back in the box, you can. And that's excellent for collectors and also for just storing it if you don't want to have it standing around. I hope Mattel takes this idea and applies it to the bigger dinosaur releases like the Brachiosaurus, because they are quite hard to store, and it would be nice to take those apart and be able to store them somewhere else where it takes up less space. This straight away looks really pretty. You can instantly tell that Mattel has put a lot of effort into the sculpt, and there is plenty of detail onto this. And it's got sharper details overall as well compared to other Hammond collection releases, which is such a breath of fresh air. There's a couple of improved parts as well, which I will mention, and a couple of things that they could improve still, but overall, this figure is lovely. Probably one of their best Hammond collection figures. Actually, I should say the best Hammond collection figure they have released. Before we start looking at it in detail, I should probably mention that it is rather odd that they decided to go with an Irritator for the Jurassic World and Jurassic Park line, as it's never appeared in any movie. And you'd think it would make much more sense to portray dinosaurs from the films. Otherwise, what is the point of having the license to use the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World IP? It doesn't make much sense. But at the same time, this is something we've never had before, and it is quite interesting. Let's have a look at this figure. So this is a Spinosaurid. It's got a long snout like the Spinosaurus and the Baryonyx. This is probably about the same size of the Baryonyx. We will do a comparison later. But if we start with the head, the first thing that struck me was the teeth are actually sharp and they're rubbery. Look at that. It is a separate part of molded and casted material, which is lovely, and it makes this dinosaur look so much more fierce, and it makes it look like an actual carnivore instead of having some really wide, big buck teeth. It is honestly such a good move on Mattel. This is gorgeous. Absolutely brilliant stuff. It sports a red crest at the top, and detail wise it's quite sharp. That you can see every single scale on the face and on the bottom jaw. The eyes are quite recessed in, makes it look a little goofy, but it's fine, it still looks really nice. The mouth is sculpted pretty well. The separate part of the teeth has been painted there pink, so it blends in with the rest of the inside of the mouth. Same goes with the tongue. The tongue and the teeth are the same rubbery bit, but that has been painted pink. All the rest of the inside of the mouth is hard glossy plastic. One thing I should mention is that generally the sculptors at Mattel don't really focus much on the underside of the jaw, and it's barely got any sort of wrinkles in the skin. It's just textured very lightly with some scales. Generally on Jurassic Park and Jurassic World dinosaurs, you can see some lovely wrinkling under the jaw that is consistent throughout every single dinosaur design from the franchise, so I would have expected that to appear here too, but it is common for them not to put that detail in the dinosaur releases. It's not a big problem at all. It's just something that I would like to point out because I'm quite maniacal. Top of the head is quite wide. The actual real animal had a much slender skull. In fact, you'd be surprised by how thin some dinosaur skulls really are. Moving on to the neck. This part of the neck is one solid piece of plastic. I know some people are a bit upset they wanted an extra part of articulation in the neck because it's such a long neck. But honestly, I think it's fine. It looks really nice, and the more articulation you add to a figure, the more sort of takes away from the general aesthetic of the dinosaur. Looking at the bottom part of the neck, you can see some lovely detail right there, some crocodilian scoots right there, which is lovely. Usually Mattel doesn't sculpt the bottom part of the dinosaurs much. It's generally quite smooth. But in this case, they went above and beyond and sculpted every single little scale and scoot, which is lovely. The detail here is much more crisp than other Hammond collection releases. As you can see, there's some little osteoderms running down the neck, right here and right there. Moving on to the body, it is very nice, highly detailed, just like the neck. There's some lovely detail here, transitioning from this crocodilian looking scootage to some smaller scales to some rounder and bigger scales right there. Absolutely gorgeous detail work. Now, one thing that kind of bothers me a little bit is how they sculpt the rib cage. Rib cages don't look like that. The skin and the material, the fat around the ribs doesn't behave like that at all in any animal. It looks a bit like a ham joint with the butcher string tightly wrapped around it. It kind of gives me that impression. It looks like something has been pushing onto the skin instead of ribs poking out from the skin. It should be the complete opposite of what Mattel did here. It almost looks like someone got a fork and just scraped it down the side of the dinosaur. This is just a little sculpting nitpick that I have. As a sculptor, I can notice things like this that doesn't make any sense anatomically, but that's just me. I'm sure nobody else would point this out collectors wise. Probably some other sculptors will think the same as I do. It has a small sail, something akin to what some people might imagine a young Spinosaurus's sail to look like, which reminds me of a cool mod that Blue Fury Designs made with one of their Irritator figures. They modded it so it looked like a young Spinosaurus. It looks really awesome. But there's some cool sort of wrinkling going on here. The scales aren't very visible, it's quite soft, but there are some nice wrinkles on it. And it's got some osteoderms or spikes running along the crest of it. Having a look at the legs, there are some really crisp looking small scales along the side right there, and some bigger ones on the thigh right there. Generally looks really nice. It does have a bit too much of a round shape, like like every single Hammond collection figure. Not as bad as the Velociraptors though, those are ridiculous, but this one looks alright. They have improved it on this figure. Theropod dinosaurs have a thin back of the thigh and it widens up towards the front of it. It would look a bit like a heart if you look at it from the top like this. But Mattel's seem to widen quite a bit too much towards the back, which gives it a very thick kind of look from the back. Makes it look like it's got a big bottom. They have improved it on this figure. It looks much nicer. It doesn't look as goofy, I should say. There's some lovely detail here on the shin. This is some of the finest scaling detail I've ever seen on a Mattel figure, and it is absolutely stunning stuff. It's got some wrinkles on the knee. The feet are sculpted beautifully with some lovely scoots. The dew claw isn't painted as usual, but it's nice to see that Mattel have made slightly smaller feet on these, and they look so much nicer, because if you might recall, Mattel loves to add gigantic feet to their dinosaurs, especially on the main line, but also on some of the Hammond collection dinosaurs like the Velociraptor and the T-Rex. The feet are embarrassingly too big. It doesn't make any sense anatomically, and it's not accurate at all to what we see in the films, but this, they put a bit more effort into this, and it really does show. It looks gorgeous. Now, having a look at the tail, there is a cut here to allow the tail to articulate. There's some lovely wrinkles here that continue onto the tail. The tail's got some really fine scaling right there, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's so lovely. Spikes continuing down to the tail from the sail, and the tail's generally quite thin but also quite tall. It feels very Spinosaurid-like, and it's lovely. Absolutely lovely stuff. Almost looks like a paddle, similar to one of the more recent discoveries on the Spinosaurus. One thing that I noticed is that it does have a line going down the middle right there, which anatomically doesn't make much sense. It doesn't look bad at all. It almost looks like a muscle sort of line right there, but I can see why they added it. It's because there is a seam line going down here, which is where the two parts of the mold connect, and there's always a little seam line showing. And it being camouflaged into the sculpt like this is quite a smart move and clever move by Mattel right there, to hide it into the sculpt. There's usually some hard bits of plastic here that hold the bendy wire that is inside this rubbery tail. If I move it there, you could probably see it, but that camouflages quite well into the sculpt too, because it looks a bit like a scale. And that is quite clever too. There is a lot of attention to detail onto this one. Again, as I said earlier, it really does show. We still have one of the weird decisions that Mattel keeps doing on their figures is the round base of the tail. As you can see, it's a perfectly circular base, which allows the tail to swivel around like this, which is something that the animal couldn't do. I don't see why anyone would want to pose it like this. If it had a thinner base to the tail, it would look more realistic, more accurate anatomically, and you'd still be able to pose the tail like this. Looking at the paint job, it is quite basic. They call these premium figures, but this is the type of paint job that you would have seen on like a release from Kenner, quality wise, if not a little bit worse, which those were kids' toys. This is an adult collector's line. So I always feel like the paintwork is slightly lacking, even on collector's stuff by Mattel. It looks nice. It certainly looks really nice. It does drive the point, but it doesn't look as premium as some other toy companies' premium lines. As you can see, the yellow striping only goes up to, it's not even half of the tail, it's just before halfway through the tail, and the white part underneath only reaches this part. Well, in reality, a dinosaur from the Jurassic franchise would have the counter shading going all the way down to the tail. They just do that so they can cut a bit of cost out of their budget and save some money for themselves, which really should not be the aim of a premium collector's figure, but it still looks really nice. Like, honestly, it's beautiful. Some people were a little bit upset by how pronounced this black was on the face, but honestly, it's totally fine. I don't see any problems with that. The eye is painted orange. The pupil is black, but that's because of the black paint underneath. So that's clever. I just can't get over how beautiful these teeth look. Please, Mattel, do this for every single dinosaur you release. It's beautiful. As mentioned earlier, there is a red crest on the top of the head. Well, it's like an orange red, really. The bottom jaw is white and black. The whole figure is cast into this grey plastic, and there's some lovely yellow patterns and stripes going down the body and the neck, and a bit on the thigh there too. The claws are painted dark grey on all the figure. Again, the dew claw isn't painted. I should probably mention that the claws on this figure on the hands look a little bit stumpy. As this was a fish eater, it probably would have had much bigger claws on the hands, like Spinosaurus and Baryonyx and whatever. They do look a bit strange. Not sure why they went for such short claws on the hands. Before we finish, I should probably mention the articulation. The top jaw opens like so, and the bottom jaw opens like that, giving it a really wide gape. There is articulation in the neck here and here. There is an articulated tail with a bendy wire in it. The arms articulate backwards and forwards and in and out. The elbow articulates like so, and it swivels around too. There is no wrist articulation, which some people have a problem with. The legs articulate backwards and forwards, in and out. The knee articulates like so. The ankle and the toes. The articulation on the legs feels a bit ratchety. It kind of clicks into place like that, so it makes posing a little bit harder. They do it so that it can stand like so, but if you want to pose it in separate poses, maybe a little bit further back, it kind of likes to go back into place, which is a little bit of a weird thing, because I noticed that Mattel's dinosaurs have a really weird center of gravity. In its normal position or posing like this, which is where all the limbs sort of lock into place, it's a little bit back heavy, as if they designed this figure to stand without a tail. So if we do this and take the tail off, it should stand, which completely defeats the purpose of even having a tail, which is really strange. A tail like this is designed to counterbalance the animal. Because the animal is quite front heavy, it needs a long tail to be able to balance it. But if you design a figure that interlocks, that locks into place, so it can't stand properly, is really strange. So to be able to move the center of gravity, which is where the knee and the toes are, to a bit further back so it doesn't fall back, you'd need to move the thigh a little bit like that and make it like that. But it likes to switch back into place, which is really annoying. There, like that, it just switched back into place. But if I do that, it stands really well, and it looks like the center of gravity makes sense now. It doesn't look top heavy, it doesn't look back heavy, it looks just right like this. But if you put it back into the original position, it looks a bit back heavy. It isn't too much of a problem. It is a little bit strange that it doesn't make much sense physics wise and anatomically. The fact that it's poseable really helps. Now let's compare it to some other releases by Mattel. The Baryonyx has slightly bigger feet, or not slightly, quite bigger feet actually. A bigger head, I think. It's definitely got bigger claws, but it's in the same size range. It does have that weird center of balance of gravity thing going on here too, which big feet don't fix. Let's compare the feet size. As you can see, the Irritator's got smaller feet, which looks much nicer. One thing about the Baryonyx that a lot of people had a problem with is the teeth. As you can see, these are molded and casted in one piece with the top of the head and the jaw. So this isn't separate material, and it does show the teeth are really wide and thick, but like compared to this new Irritator, this Irritator's teeth are so much prettier, so much better, and it really does make a heck of a difference. So if Mattel decide to re-release the Baryonyx, they should definitely fix the teeth and the size of the feet to match the newer Irritator release. Another comparison is with the Hammond Collection Velociraptor with the replacement head and feet that I made. Ugh, look at those hips. That's horrible. Just can't get over how nasty those hips look. Anyway, this is a size comparison between the Irritator and the Raptor. It is quite a bit bigger. And now let's grab a Hammond Collection human figure. And here's Mr. Arnold compared to the Irritator. Now, I give this figure a solid 9 out of 10, maybe even 10 out of 10, but I don't like giving 10 out of 10 unless it's absolutely perfect. The little things that I mentioned, like the ribcage thing, which isn't a problem at all, but it is a bit of an issue for me because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and the whole center of gravity thing sort of take it down for a point for me, but a 9 out of 10. From me, which I'm quite harsh with my reviews. This is a solid figure, guys. This is really nice, really lovely. So I really do recommend it. Buy it. It would be lovely to see this kind of attention to detail with actual film dinosaurs, Mattel. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions or feedback or your thoughts about this dinosaur, put them down in the comment section below. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!
I would like to give a massive thank you to all of my Patreons. Seriously guys, your support really does mean the world to me, as it helps me do what I love for you. You help me buy materials, and most of all, you give me a helping hand with improving the quality of the content of my videos. Even if it's just a small donation, every little helps.